Boysen comes to us today as a veteran, having served on several fronts, serving time in Vietnam, Bosnia, Germany, Kuwait, and Iraq. Skip was born in Burlington, Iowa, eventually graduating from high school in Madison, Indiana. He was drafted in 1969 and continued his military career until 2003. Currently, Skip volunteers at the Camp Dodge Museum and has served as past commander of the Johnston American Legion. Please help me welcome Skip Boysen.
Thank you very much for coming. I know some of you are here voluntarily and some are involuntarily, but thanks for coming anyway. So I'll try to make 3 different points today. And first I'm going to talk about coming home from Vietnam versus coming home from Iraq, and what veterans want, and what you can do for your future for the military. I was lucky. I graduated in 1969 from college, and in June, and then 2 months later in August, I got word from the president that he sent me greetings. So it was the last year of the draft, and and next year, I mean 1970, they did a lottery system, and then in 1972 they did change to the volunteer army. But it was the draft. As long as you stayed in college, made a C average, you got your 2S deferment. But if your grades went down or you dropped out of college, then your chances of going to Vietnam were pretty high. So you had one choice. You actually had some choices when you got your draft notice. You could enlist in the other services for 4 years, or enlist in the Army for 3 years and get your choice, so you would stay out of the infantry. And so I opted for the 3-year enlistment and went into supply, which is a little safer. But I had basic training at Fort Knox, and then Fort Lee, and then Land Army Depot, and then to Vietnam. First I served at Long Binh Depot. It was 50,000 troops. It was a real big post there, and they had 4 big depots in Vietnam. At its high point, Vietnam had about 400,000 to 500,000 troops there at one time. So we've got a lot of veterans that served in Vietnam. And so then I was able to get another job, and so I had to extend for 3 more months. And this was a job teaching English to Vietnamese sergeants at Vung Tau. So I applied for that and got it, and that was a very rewarding job, teaching. These Vietnamese sergeants had English in high school, but they couldn't speak it that well, so then they were going to go on to the Vietnamization program taken over for Americans. So it was a real interesting job, and I extended another time and ended up serving 19 months in Vietnam, and I really enjoyed it. But then in 1972, Nixon made some promises to get most of the troops out of Vietnam, so he was trying to get down below 100,000. So as the Army is apt to do, a lot of times it's, if you're standing there, it's hey you know, so they said, pack your bags, you're going home in 2 days. So let me backtrack a little bit. In 1972, we didn't have it was sort of medieval times compared to what we have right now electronically. Computers were just coming into effect. Computers were as big as a room, and you didn't have the computer system was punch cards. I don't know if you've ever seen a punch card with the 70 fields on it, you know, and you had to punch in the numbers, but it was a different system. And once you went to Vietnam, you had no contact with your friends and family back home except by the mail. You had no satellite phones or or nothing else like that. So when you went there, you were stuck for a year, unless you were married and you went R&R to Hawaii for 1 week. Otherwise, the only way you could communicate was with letters, which took 8 to 10 days sometimes to get the mail. So when I got word I was going home, I sent a letter home, told my parents that I'd be coming, but I didn't know when. So we went to Saigon, and then we caught the first flight home, and we landed in Oakland, and in the middle of the night, and then we out-processed. Now we came home in khakis, the summer uniform, so they issued us all the green uniforms. I'll never forget, in the room there they had a trash can, and you know, everybody got their green uniforms put on, and then right away they took them all off and threw them in the trash because the Army changed the system that you didn't have to wear your uniform home, because when you went to the airport in San Francisco, they would spit on you and call you names, baby killer, and all that stuff. So nobody wore their uniform home, and it's just a sad day, you know, that that people were ashamed or afraid to wear their uniform home after Vietnam, and so it was interesting that. Well, I went through the airport there, even though back in 1972 everybody had long hair, and if you were carrying a duffel bag with short hair, they knew where you've been and what you're doing. So you had to be careful of the protesters there at San Francisco airport. So I had a 6-year break before I got back in the military after that, and it was something I never thought I'd get back in the military, because in Vietnam, the Army had gotten so bad, you know, after going on for 10 years, drug problems, the race problems, lack of discipline, and the Army was really feeling the worst part of the long Vietnam War, so there was a lot of problems that the Army had. But when I got back in the Army, in the reserves, after 6 years, it was remarkable how well it improved, and really did a good job. So then, fast forward 30 years to Iraq. So I was fortunate enough to serve in Vietnam and Iraq, and it was quite a difference. Well, we were augmentation to a unit in Germany, so first we went over 2002, right before the war started. We didn't have a going away party or anything like that. We went over to Germany and trained with our sister unit over there, and then we moved into Kuwait. So I was fortunate enough to have 2 really good jobs on my tour over there. I was camp mayor of Camp Victory in Kuwait, and we had a series of about 5 different camps in Kuwait, where all the troops came in and went home through Kuwait on their way to Iraq. And the 1133rd Transportation Unit from Mason City was there at my camp, and they lost 4 people. They were truck drivers, and a lot of the Guard and Reserve units were at some of the most dangerous jobs in Iraq, driving trucks and being MPs, which are, once Iraqi terrorists learned how to use IEDs, then it really became dangerous. That just started in 2003. They put dead dogs on the road with bombs in them and trash. There was so much trash along the roads that you just couldn't watch everything. So it was a really dangerous job being a trucker in Iraq. So a lot of units lost their troops through the IEDs. But and then after 4 months in Kuwait, then our unit moved to Iraq, and I was fortunate to get another good job. I was a logistics advisor to the multinational division in Babylon. So we had it was Poland, Spain, and Ukraine were the three main countries, and we had responsibility for 5 provinces in the south of Baghdad. So it was a real interesting job. Those countries probably had a better organization following Army doctrine than the United States did, and they did a real good job, and it was a pleasure serving with them. So we've had some reunions since in Poland and Hungary with those troops, and keep in contact with email. So, but anyway, going back to Vietnam, when I wrote the letter home, and then I got to the airport in San Francisco, called home and no answer, and then flew to Louisville and called home, no answer, and so then I took a cab across the river to Indiana, and then I hitchhiked home, and when I got home, the door was locked, and my parents were on vacation that week, so I was luckily the neighbor had a key, so I was able to get in the house. But when you came home from Vietnam, nobody asked you what you did or were happy to see you, unless it was your immediate family. You just tried to blend in, get your hair grew long, and try to blend in with society again, and you never talked about it. That's why the parade they had last year, Governor Branstad honored all the veterans, and I marched with Iraq behind our unit, and but a lot of Vietnam veterans marched in that parade, and they said they'd never received that admiration that they did during that parade when they came home from Vietnam. So you kind of snuck home and tried to blend in as fast as you could, and nobody wanted to talk about Vietnam, even though you weren't a baby killer or anything like that. You were just doing your job, and it was you were just following what the politicians wanted. But people didn't honor the veterans from Vietnam. But then fast forward to when we came home, Iraq was a little different. Since our unit was a logistics headquarters, most of us had laptops, so you could email home every day. The USO had phone banks where you could call, and that's why those phone cards, you send over are important for so much per minute. And even some people had satellite phones where they could call home. So it was a different war than Vietnam, where you could talk to your friends and family via the internet versus in Vietnam, it was a week or so from the mail. So when we came home, we had 140 people in the unit, and we were one of the first units to go and come back. So we had a party. We had 800 people showed up, and it was quite a different homecoming from Vietnam that we experienced. So it was real interesting how glad everybody was to see us compared to when he came home from Vietnam. But going on, it's interesting what we think of our veterans now versus what we thought back in the 1960s and 1970s. So, and even if you don't agree with the war, you need to honor the veteran because he's just doing his job and doing the best he can. So one thing I think the veterans, one of the problems that they have getting a job. You know, on the national level, we've got different programs to hire veterans, you know, and that the problem is for some of the small companies hiring veterans, I think there's still some discrimination because especially the ones that are in the Guard and Reserve. It used to be in the Guard and Reserve you could do your 20 years and never go anywhere. But now, because the active Army is so small, the Guard and Reserve is called on all the time. So a lot of Guardsmen and Reservists got called up 2 and 3 times to Iraq and Afghanistan. So it's not just a weekend and 2 weeks in the summer job anymore. You're going to be doing a lot of service, and a lot of companies don't want to hire Guard or Reserve people that are still in because it becomes a hardship for them when the person gets deployed for a year, and even on the weekends if somebody else does the cover for them and things like that. So there's still some discrimination on hiring in the small companies, I think, hiring the Guard and Reserve members. So what can you do to help a veteran? I know, I think there's a lot of Guardsmen that live in this area, and you know, when somebody gets deployed, you know, you can stop in, talk to the family, see if there's anything they need, you know, take some food over to them. It becomes real difficult for the spouse to keep up when the husband's deployed for a year. So it's something you can do to help them, you know, and make sure and welcome them home when they come. Like all things, I think the American people are kind of fickle, and you know, the people that went to Iraq and Afghanistan early on, you know, people turned out for them, but now, you know, units come home and it's just their family shows up, nobody else, and people are getting tired of the war. It's dragged on for 10 years now, but the people that are going now deserve the same admiration that the people early on got when they went to Iraq and Afghanistan. So anything you can do to, you know, help the families that are home when one of their spouses is deployed, you know, mow the yard and make sure the cars are running and things like that, you know, would be appreciated. Next thing is, you know, some of you seniors are looking for what you're going to do when you graduate, and you know, once the war gets done in Afghanistan, I think the military will get back to become a good place to serve. And you know, it's not that you're going to stay home your whole career, though. You're going to be deployed different places, but more peacekeeping and not more warfighting jobs. So, you know, if you're unsure of what you want to do, if you don't want to flounder around in college and not sure what you want to do in college, the military is a good thing to look at. We've got a good GI Bill now, and I guarantee after you serve in the military, your grades will improve when you go back to college because you become more focused, you know how to prioritize things, and you're able to ascertain what is the most important thing in life. So, you know, I know sometimes when your air conditioner doesn't work, just think of the people in Iraq and Afghanistan where it's 140 degrees and they got all the body armor on and things like that. If you don't get a shower every day, and think how it is to go without a shower for over a week, and try learning how to take a shower with a 2-liter bottle, and you appreciate everything the veteran does and the sacrifices he makes. So, and so take a look at, you know, if you're unsure of what you want to do, and in college, take a look at serving in the military and then go to college, and I think you'll find that you Military service, I think, is good for a lot of people. It gives them a focus, and I think you'll all benefit from that. And I know it's a tough decision sometimes, and but I think the rewards are very good. So I thank you for listening to me, and it was enjoyable. So.